Yo, what is up, everybody? It is Riley's Redzone here, and I am back to give you another picks video. Now, I am racing up against the clock. I've been pretty busy this week with homework, so there's an hour until the game. This probably won't get up until then. If it does, I'm an absolute legend for that, but if it doesn't, hopefully it should get up during the Browns-Bengals game. So yeah, hopefully it gets out by then or during it. But last week I did pretty darn good. I went 12-4 in the picks, and so that puts us at 12-4 overall in the season. Now this week I'm taking a lot of upsets, so you want to watch the video and see which upsets I am taking. I also did pretty decent last week at predicting who would have good games, so I might do that again this week and try to get some more, accurate predictions. So with that being said, here are my NFL game picks for week 2. For game number 1, we have the Thursday night football game, which for me is actually just about to start, so it will be going on when this video is uploaded. But I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals, who are technically behind. The Browns are favored by 5.5, and I think that's very interesting. I could see that. I definitely could see the Browns winning this game, but I'm taking Joe Burrow. I really feel more confident in Joe Burrow in that offense right now than Baker with OBJ, and then Jarvis Landry is playing, but a little banged up. I think that's an issue for them. So I am going with Joe Burrow. He performed very well. I'm expecting Joe Mixon to have a big game. He had 98% of the running back carries last week for the Bengals, and he didn't do too much with it. So I think he'll get the same, a lot of, opportunity. He just needs to be more efficient, and I think he will do better against this Browns defense than he did the Chargers defense. So I think that he will do very good. It's very close, though. The other positions, I think Myles Garrett will have a day, but I feel more, it all comes down to it, I feel more confident in Joe Burrow than I do Baker Mayfield tonight, so I have the Bengals winning. So next we have the Jaguars and the Titans, and I'm taking the Titans. They are favored by 8. Derrick Henry is the Jaguar king. Okay, that was a pretty bad pun, if you know what I went for there, but they are in fact favored. Derrick Henry has had a lot of good games against the Jaguars, so I am going with them. That's a huge factor. I also think that the Titans, honestly, they squeaked a win out against a Broncos team who I think is better than the Jaguars team, and that the Titans last week missed 3 field goals, 3 kicks. That's huge. So if they can even get anything going with Stephen Gostkowski, and I think he's a good kicker, they'll do better. And if they can get A.J. Brown going, they got Corey Davis going, but if they can get A.J. Brown going, I think that offense will be very good. Jags obviously put up a great game last week. I don't think Gardner has the same success, but I think the Jaguars are definitely a deep sleeper team, but I don't think they get the win this week. So I am going with the Titans. Expect A.J. Brown to get more involved and have a big game there. I think he will go very well against those Jags corners. So, Titans win. We got Giants-Bears, and this is a very interesting one. I think this will be super close. Could come down to even a field goal, I'm thinking. But it's very interesting. I hope Allen Robinson plays for this pick's purpose. I don't know, though, whether he is going to. I believe he is, but obviously if you have not heard this week, he obviously wants a contract extension. That's what all players want, and he wants the big money. So he needs to be extended now. But there's also rumors he wants to be traded. He deleted all of his Bear stuff off his Instagram, whatever. People, they said the same thing about Giannis a few weeks ago in basketball. So I don't think that's a huge thing in my opinion. I'm taking the Bears mostly because of Allen Robinson, if he plays. If he doesn't, there's a good chance the Giants win this game. I was going to make it kind of twisted here and say if Allen Robinson doesn't play, then I'll take the Giants. But then that's confusing. So I'm just riding it out. I'm going with the Bears, which is not an upset. They are projected to win by 5.5 points. So I'm taking them. I think Saquon has a little bit of a better game, but I overall think that the pass rush with Khalil Mack will do very well against those Giants tackles. So I think they'll do pretty good. Specifically, I think the Giants secondary is not very good, so that's why I like Allen Robinson this week. Giants offense-wise, I think they're not going to do amazing in the passing game. Darius Slayton could do well again, but I think Saquon does better, but I don't think the passing game is quite there yet this week. I think Daniel Jones struggles. He'll be pressured a lot, so I don't think he does as well. So, I'm taking the Bears for this game. Falcons, Cowboys here. So, both teams lost last week. I think the Falcons are a good team. I think that they are a good kind of sleeper team to maybe be on the outside of the playoffs, kind of 8-8 range, in my opinion. But I definitely think the Cowboys could be a little overrated. I picked the Rams last week. That paid off, so that was good. But so they both lost. They both played very tough teams. I think the Falcons, though, not a great start on the schedule. Obviously playing the Seahawks and the Cowboys. So I am taking the Cowboys. They are favored by 4.5. So I'm going with them. I specifically think that Dak steps it up this week. I think he does pretty well. Julio Jones is a little banged up, and he would be key, though, against the Cowboys here. If Julio can be, 100%, I think he can do very well, but he is a little banged up, so I think that's a big factor. Todd Gurley, this offense for the Falcons is pretty good, but I overall think the balance is there with the Cowboys. They got Aldon Smith going last week. That's a big thing, because I don't think this Falcons offensive line is very good, and to have him and DeMarcus Lawrence both doing good, that is key. So I'm taking the Cowboys this week, but this is probably one of the closest games of the week. Could see it either way, but I'm going with the Cowboys. Broncos, Steelers, these are two teams I really like going into the season. The Von Miller injury, though, in my opinion, really hurt Denver, as I had them as one of those teams that would really step it up and maybe make the playoffs with Drew Lock as a possible MVP candidate, like one of those big step-up years. But I don't think that happens now. Courtland Sutton's kind of still banged up, and that Steelers secondary is pretty good. This whole defense might be the best defense in the league, and I've loved the Steelers this year. I feel like people kind of forgot about them because Ben was hurt last year. And it's like Ben, I think, could even be better than what he was when he was last on the field. He's had a lot of training. I think he's really ready to go. And his connection with Juju last week was great. So I am going with the Steelers. They are favored by 7.5 points. I just think that this defense is going to be too much for Drew Lock and, a banged up Courtland Sutton and then Jerry Jeudy. So I think that will be a little too much for them. But I really think the Steelers are going to do well. I think A.J. Boye is also actually banged up. He might be on injured reserve, I believe, for the Broncos. So I think that Juju has a good game. Deontay Johnson stepped it up last week. So I am picking the Steelers this week. Next we have Vikings, Colts, and I am a Vikings fan. But to be fair, I picked against them last week. I picked the Packers. I was right about that. So it's very interesting to me is the Vikings did not look good on Sunday. They did not. But honestly, as a person that watched that full game, I think if a few plays go differently towards the beginning of the game, momentum isn't as bad, and I think the Colts are nowhere near the Packers level, specifically in a few spots. But the Colts here lost to what I thought was the worst team in the league, but everybody thought they were tanking. I mean, I thought they would still be, not like terrible, but pretty bad, but they lost that, and it Phillip Rivers has this kind of narrative going on right now that he's not a good fourth quarter player. I think he still can be this year. I just think, honestly, their offensive receivers, they have T.Y. Hilton, so I don't love the Vikings corners. Obviously, they're starting a lot of young guys. That's why they struggled last week. You had a few bad plays. Devontae Adams went off like I called that. And even Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who has not historically been very good, got some good catches against those Vikings DBs. So T.Y. Hilton could do well. I just don't know if the other guys are ready to step up yet. I like Michael Pittman. Don't think he's ready to be a number 2 receiver, though, right now. Zach Pascal, I guess, is okay, but not. I think the Vikings can still cover him. So expect maybe the tight end Jack Doyle to try to get open a little bit for him this week. I do think Jonathan Taylor, though, will also have a big game this week. So it's very interesting to me. I feel like the Vikings were kind of flipped on last week. I know they weren't very good, but now they're actually. The Colts are favored in this game, which although they're at home, I'm still very shocked by that. I don't believe the Vikings are going to be very, very bad this year, which obviously seems to be the way the Colts were last week as they lost to the Jags, who I still don't think will be amazing this year. So I think Jonathan Taylor has a good game, but I think the Vikings do a little bit better in the secondary. So I have the Vikings winning in an upset. Okay, everybody calm down. The Bucs season is not over after one game. I think they're going to be fine this week. I think they bounce back against the Panthers, who I actually picked last week to be the Raiders. It was pretty close, but just couldn't quite do it. But I do think that the Panthers would put up a good fight, but I'm taking the Bucs, who are favored by 9. They're at home. I think Brady does a lot better against these Panthers DBs. Their best corner is Dante Jackson, and he's kind of all speed, to be honest. And I think that this is going to be a decently close game, but I think Godwin, Evans, even though Evans is a little banged up, I think these receivers will do very good this week. Even though the Bucs line isn't that good, I think that Panthers don't have like a star pass rusher. Brian Burns is still coming up, but I think the Bucs are okay. They're gonna be fine, and I think they bounce back this week and get a win at home. Bills, Dolphins. The Bills have obviously gotten off to a hot start, but that was just against the Jets. And I think they are a team that people have been saying all year, oh, they're going to win the division. But I think the Patriots do with Cam Newton. But I do think they'll get a win against the Dolphins. They've played two of the worst teams in football first 2 weeks. They are only favored by 5.5, which is interesting. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the king of comebacks, kind of going against the odds. So obviously he could make something happen. That's a possibility. But I think that the Bills get it done. They, once again, can do good in the receiving game. He's trying to get the connection going with Diggs, but it's going to be a lot more difficult this week against those Dolphins corners. But I do think the Dolphins receiving core is kind of where it struggles at, as Devontae Parker is going to be a little banged up, and so Preston Williams is going to have to step up a lot, and probably Mike Gesicki over the middle at tight end. So that's obviously a big deal because you want, full health at your receiving. But I think Ryan Fitzpatrick could make something happen, but I think that the Bills get it done this week and they win, I'm going to say by more than 5.5 points. Niners, Jets, kind of like the Bucs. I think people are already kind of jumping off the 49ers bandwagon, and they lost to a good Cardinals team. I said that last week. Although I picked the Niners, I said the Cardinals are going to be good this year. So you can't overreact, and I just don't think the Jets are very good at all, and it hurts even more that Le'Veon Bell is out, especially as a fantasy owner of him in 3 out of 4 leagues. But they have Frank Gore now at running back, but I just don't think that's enough for anything. I think these corners, they lost Richard Sherman. I will say that. The Niners did lose Richard Sherman for a few weeks. That's pretty big, but even their backup corners, the best threat you have to worry about on the Jets is Jamison Crowder. He's a slot receiver. So, obviously, also Kittle is banged up. That's a big thing for the Niners. He's basically their focal point of the offense, but I think Raheem Mostert has another good week. I don't think he'll get a, 70-yard touchdown, but I think he'll have another good week. And I think the Niner team is still too much. Even though they didn't do the best last week, I think they still get the win. They're only favored by 6.5, but I think they win by more than that, so I'm taking the Niners. Rams, Eagles. I picked the Rams last week, and I felt really good about that. I like this Rams team. I'm taking a chance on this one, though. I'm surprised the Eagles are actually favored in this game. I don't feel great picking this, but I'm hopeful that Miles Sanders will be back, and I'm also hopeful that Lane Johnson will be back. I think those would both be big pieces for them to bring back. That's key. If they can get them back from injury, I think that helps them a lot. Because if Lane Johnson's not back, Aaron Donald is about to have an absolute field day on this defense, offensive line. That defense is going to do super good. They've got Jalen Ramsey, and the Eagles don't really have a pure number one receiver. So the more I talk about it, the more it makes me want to pick the Rams. On paper, the Rams are probably the better team. But I just have a gut feeling this week. I think the Eagles are able to get it done at home. Carson Wentz has a bounce-back game. They got off to a big lead last week. They just need to finish it. So I think if they get their pieces back from injury, I think the Eagles, I'm surprised they're favorites. I almost feel like they should be an upset, but I just have a gut feeling that the Eagles will win this week. Lions, Packers. The Packers obviously performed super well last week. Lions were close to winning, but couldn't pull it off against the Bears. So, Packers, I think, have a very good week. Desmond Trufant is hurt, and that's a big deal as Jeff Okudah, the rookie, who I think he was a top 5 player this year in his class, will have to match up against Devonta Adams. So, I think they'll do better than matching up against Holton Hill. I don't know why the Vikings put Holton Hill on Devonta Adams like the whole game. So I think he'll do better than that, but I still think that Packers offense is going to be too much, especially against this Lions defense. They have a lot of good young players, but nobody I absolutely love on this team. So I think they just don't quite have the firepower. They're still figuring out the running back. Seems like they like to use, they tried using Swift, but he ended up having a big drop, unfortunately, at the end of the game. Then you've got Kerryon Johnson. They're not using as much, and AP looked like an absolute stud out there. It looked like he was back. I'll just say 30, even though he looked explosive at certain areas. He's obviously not MVP Adrian Peterson, but looked pretty good. So he's kind of bouncing back, but I think the Packers are still way too much on offense and defense, so they get the win. They're favored by 6, which is interesting. I think they could win by more than that, but they're favored by 6, so I think they'll win. Washington football team versus the Arizona Cardinals. Both teams pulled off an upset last week, so the game could be pretty close, but I have the Cardinals winning. So the Cardinals looked great last week against the Niners. Football team made a big comeback, but I do think the Cardinals get it done. I love Kyler as an MVP candidate this year. There's always been a second-year quarterback making a big jump. I think that is him this year. I at one point thought it was going to be Drew Lock, but with the Von Miller injury, I think it's Kyler Murray. So I think he'll get a little bit better connection with DeAndre Hopkins. I think they're going to do well this week against those corners for Washington. So I think Hopkins has a good game. I think that whole offense kind of does well this week. But the football team won't do too bad. I think they'll really keep it close. I just don't have complete confidence in that offense yet with Haskins. I think he still needs a little bit of time. So I think the Cardinals win. Ravens, Texans. I think this is going to be a really good game. Might be the best pure game of, you take the two best teams. Overall, it's the best two teams playing against each other. I'm not saying these are the two best teams, obviously, but, overall, having two good teams play each other. I think that it was Texans-Chiefs last week, too, might have been the best game of pure good teams. But I think the Texans will put up a fight here, but I think Lamar is just way too good for this Texans team to even have a chance. J.J. Watt looked okay last week. For Texans fans, it hurts right now not having DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, Will Fuller is your number one receiver with Brandon Cooks kind of being involved. Don't love that. They really needed a number one receiver, at least the way it seemed last week in Kansas City for them. So I think they put up a fight. They're at home, but the Ravens are just going to be way too much they've got both Ingram and Dobbins going. Dobbins scored a few touchdowns last week. That's huge to get him going as well as Mark Ingram. If he can get going as well, and Mark Andrews also, that offense is really good. So I think that the Ravens are just too much, even though the Texans, I think, are a very good team this year. I like them as probably, I think they'll win the division, in my opinion. Well, maybe they won't win it, but they're the best team in the division. They just have a pretty tough schedule, especially to start. So if they can get David Johnson going and at least get some flashes of his former self, that would be good as well. So I think Lamar's just way too much. They're favored by 7. I think that's about accurate. So I have the Ravens winning. Chiefs, Chargers. This should be a good game. They're division rivals. But last week I picked the Chargers. They ended up winning, barely though. And Chiefs, I picked in that live stream. So these are both teams that won last week. Actually, you look at 3 out of the 4 teams in the AFC West won. But plain and simple, Patrick Mahomes is going to be way too much for this Chargers defense. They are favored by 8.5. The Chiefs are. I just think that this defense is very good for the Chargers, especially if they can get Jerry Tillery going, as he didn't have the best year last year. But if they can get him going, they definitely will put up a fight. But still, I think Mahomes, Elaire, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, they even started getting Demarcus Robinson involved. I definitely think that this offense is still a lot of stars. So I think that's too much. For the Chargers side, I hope Eckler can get a little bit more involved for them. It's great that they're finding something with Josh Kelly, but they need to, in my opinion, get Eckler going in the receiving game again. But I think that both teams would be very good this year. I think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL, and I think the Chargers will be a playoff team. So I am taking the Chiefs this week. They're favored by 8.5. That's about right. I think this game will be close, but the Chiefs still win. Patriots Seahawks, and I am jumping on the Cam Newton train. I think that although the Seahawks are favored, I really like the Seahawks this year. Love Russell Wilson, great player. Their receivers are very good. I absolutely loved Cam with this Patriots team last week. That running ability, even in the goal line, is just huge to have that for them. I mean, they haven't had that, since Tom Brady is literally one of the slowest players in the league. But I definitely think that this is kind of more of a gut feeling. The Seahawks are favored, but I just have a feeling that the Patriots pull off the upset here in CenturyLink. So this should be a very close game. I think that one of the receivers, for Seattle, I think they'll still have Lockett and Metcalf going. Hopefully N'Keal Harry can have a breakout for the Patriots, those receivers. But I definitely think that Cam is going to be a very good player this year. Could be a candidate for comeback player of the year. So this is kind of just a gut feeling. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I'm picking some upsets. Here's one of them that's kind of surprising, because I really think the Seahawks are going to be really good this year. I think some people think they're going to be like a top 3 team. I don't believe that's true, but I definitely think they're going to be in the upper half of the playoffs. But even with that said, I think the Patriots win this week. Raiders Saints, even with a banged up Michael Thomas, I think that the Saints are going to be too much. Look for Emmanuel Sanders to have a big week. He'll step it up, get all those targets. I think Kamara will be involved more in the passing game. It's a combination of, I love the Saints. I think they might still be, on paper, the best team in the NFC. Losing Michael Thomas, at least his abilities, even if he's not out, is huge. That's not very good at all. But I'm also just not a Raiders fan this year. I just don't think they draft guys, but then who they go out and sign in free agency, I'm normally not a huge fan of, at least for the past few years. This year was okay. I like the Littleton and the Kwiatkowski signings, but overall, I think they sign veteran players in free agency, but then, they pick up all these draft picks, so I think they need to choose whether they're a future or win now team. So I think that division is also super tough for them. So I think the Saints get the win. Could be closer. I mean, I'm surprised the Saints are only favored by 5.5, even without Michael Thomas. So I am picking the Saints, even without Michael Thomas. I think Emmanuel Sanders steps it up. I just don't think that this Raiders defense is going to be able to stop them, even without their top weapons. So I pick the Saints. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this week's episode. Was 12-4 last week. I'm taking some bold predictions this week, so it could go down, but you miss every shot you don't take. So I'm taking some bold predictions. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely hoping to get these out every week. I'll try to get them out earlier in the week in the future. I just have been really busy this week, so it hasn't really worked out to get stuff out right away, but I'm hoping to maybe do a podcast soon about maybe recapping last week's games, as well as maybe a Madden franchise. But let me know what type of content you are looking for me to upload, and subscribe if you enjoy football content, like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.